All right, so we're rolling. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself with your name, age, and date and place of birth?
My name is Mark Meierhoffer. I'm 65 years old. I was born in St. Joseph, Missouri.
All right. So then, we're gonna
I was born May 14th. I'm a Taurus.
your Taurus. All right. So, uh, what was your house like when you were growing up?
We lived in two homes. Our first home was very, very small. My father was a family funeral director in St. Joseph, and our little house was right next to the funeral home. So we were constantly monitoring the business. He had an ambulance that went in and out at all times of the night and day. My father finally, when I was 13 years old, bought another house away from the funeral home that was a very nice two-story home in a wooded neighborhood with a cul-de-sac, very quiet. And my mother was ecstatic that she could get away from the funeral home to raise the rest of the family.
Okay. Did you guys have electricity?
Yeah, we had electricity, we had plumbing, we even had a telephone. We had one black and white television at the time with rabbit ears.
Okay.
We had four channels.
4 channels. What were those 4 channels?
What we have at the time was we had KMBC in Kansas City, KCMO in Kansas City, WDAF in Kansas City, and then we had a local station, St. Joseph, KFEQ.
All right. What was your favorite thing to do for fun when you were growing up? When you were growing up.
I think the best thing we did, my dad would take my brother and me to St. Louis every summer for a long weekend to see the Brooklyn Dodgers play the St. Louis Cardinals at Busch Stadium.
What are the Dodgers?
They are now the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Were they something important to your family? Is that why?
Well, no, they were important because mostly it was a tradition of the three men of the family getting away together to share a fun weekend of baseball and being away from my mother and my sister. So not that they were bad, it was our family getaway, and I was an avid baseball fan back then. So.
Yeah. Did you go to the movies at all or visit the beach? Well, you live in Kansas, so there is no beach. But did you go to the movies or
Well,
anything?
I lived in Missouri. I was on the other side of the state line and still a Missouri Tiger. I know that's hard for you to fathom, but it's nice if you're an equal opportunity interviewer. We actually went to the beach a couple times growing up. I had a great aunt and uncle that lived in Miami, Florida, on my father's side of the family. So we made long drives to Florida. Those are long drives. There were not interstate highways back then. It was purely you're on two-lane road, long drives, but we had a great time at the beach down in South Florida.
Do you remember any fads from your youth? Popular hairstyles, clothes?
Well, when I was later on, when growing up in my college years, hair got longer from the basic flat tops down to what was going through with the hippies back, and we talked about Woodstock at dinner. And the hairstyles really changed back in the 70s. But growing up, most kids had flat tops or short haircuts, not buzz cuts, but just short cropped hair.
What world events had the most impact on you while you were growing up?
Well, two. One was when President John Kennedy got shot, assassinated. I think I was a freshman in high school, freshman or sophomore in high school, and I remember I was going to a Catholic high school then, and one of the brothers came in. It was during my English class, and said President Kennedy had been shot, and the teacher said, "Well, is he alive or dead?" And the brother said, "I don't know," but that was just a shocking turn of events that really shaped my life. And then, I mean, I grew up when we had our first moon shot. We were entering outer space after the Russians had shot their Sputnik up. So those are two major life events.
Is there a naming tradition in your family, such as always giving the firstborn son the name of his grandfather?
Well, that's a good question, Caleb. My grandfather was Walter Meierhoffer Sr. My dad was Walter Meierhoffer Jr. Neither had middle names. When I was born, I was going to be a Walter Meierhoffer too, other than my mother demanded I be Mark. So I've gone through life with Walter Mark Meierhoffer. So I'm not the third. But that was purely, that hasn't been carried on. Well, although my son is named after my father-in-law's last name. So it's not tradition, but it's just something that's nice, and the names match, and everybody goes along with it. It's a good thing. But
All right. What stories have come down to you about your parents, grandparents, or distant ancestors?
well, my parents. It's funny when you grow up, and you'll probably hear this too. As you get older, your parents really don't tell you many stories about their shortcomings or things that they endure growing up. They're always very perfect in your eyes. But as you get older, you hear more stories about the downside of parents from their friends growing up. They become more free-tongued and free-flowing spirits, and you find out. My father, who was, as I said, a funeral director, there was a local brewery in town in St. Joseph, and he took my grandfather's hearse when he was a kid. They stole a keg of beer at the brewery, and turned out that somebody did a goose from a dead stop, and the keg got loose and fell out of the back of the hearse, broke the door, and I never heard that growing up until I heard it from my father's friend. So, but no, they grew up with very little. It was right after the Depression. My parents did a great job of raising us. We were comfortable. We were not affluent by any means. And my father was building a business much as your dad is doing right now. And most of the money he made, he redeployed back in the business to make it bigger and better, and to have something to pass along to my brother, who's now passing that business along to his son. So we had a very good upbringing. I'm very fortunate.
Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
Maybe we can come back to that one.
Okay.
I can't think of any right now.
Are there any physical characteristics that run in your family?
I don't have the one it comes from my mother's side of the family, and they had my mother's side of the family had kind of a spread out nose that is very dominant gene. We call it, her maiden name was Verdi Stout, so we called it the Stout gene. My brother has it. Two of his three kids have it. My mother and her, all three of her siblings had it. So it was a dominant gene that, thank heavens, I didn't get. That was. We were tall, most of us, so that was not real tall, but tall enough that you can see over a crowd, that's a nice gene to have.
Are there any special heirlooms, photos, Bibles, or other memorabilia that have been passed down in your family?
Well, we've passed down. My dad was in World War II, so he was a pilot in the Navy, and so we passed down some navigation maps that he had. They were silk / linen maps, and that's how they navigated off the stars and off the sunshots, and so those are some neat things, and some heirloom jewelry that my mother had passed along to my sister, which probably makes more sense that she got that stuff. But,
Tell me about your dad's experience in World War II.
My dad was, as I said, a Navy pilot. He was in college when World War II started, so he was out of college. He never graduated, actually. He left college, went to Pensacola, Florida, where he went through naval flight training, got his wings, and then flew a plane called a PBY. It was actually a patrol plane land-based, so he had, as a Navy pilot, you had to do a carrier qualification. All Navy pilots and Marine pilots had to learn how to land on an aircraft carrier, even though they may not have done that later on in their life. But he served over in the South Pacific, in the Philippines and area. And he had some traumatic experiences with some of the Philippine. There was an insurgency in the Philippines even back in World War II. When we retaken the Philippines, when MacArthur went back after it surrendered, his bomber was based, or his patrol plane was based out of there, but they had problems with communist insurgents even back in 1944, 45 or so. And but he was lucky. He came back in one piece and never got shot down. So.
What was it like when you proposed? What was it like when you proposed? Where and when did it happen? And how did you feel?
Well, I proposed to my current wife at her house. It was a great feeling. We made no date on when to get married. We said we made a commitment to each other. And as it turns out, a very good friend of mine who is now deceased said, "Okay, you get." He had a house at the Lake of the Ozarks, so he said we used to share the lake with them every 4th of July weekend. We'd have all the kids down and everything. So he said, "You just get your fannies down to the lake house down at Camdenton, Missouri, on July 4th weekend, whatever. Find a justice of peace and get married." So he provided everything, the location. We had people coming in on their boats off the lake at the reception. So it was a unique experience, but it was fantastic. It was a good weekend, weather-wise. Everything worked out, and it was kind of not your normal wedding, but it was a wedding that will be well remembered.
What was/is your profession, and how did you choose it?
Well, I'm a CPA. I still, even though I don't practice with an accounting firm anymore, I'm on my own. I chose it because I took accounting in college and liked it. I liked business, and I thought I'd heard that really, if you pursue this field, that after I got out of school and got out of the Navy and came back to work for an accounting firm in Kansas City, you see all sorts of businesses that are clients of the firm. You see get all sorts of experiences in various industries and companies, and it's just a broadening experience that you use the accounting profession or the accounting discipline to understand business. It gave me a rock solid understanding of business as a basis of really just counting shekels, and if you make money, and any firm makes money if they're going to survive or thrive. So just enjoyed it. Parts of accounting I don't like. There's a field called auditing, which is now part of the requirement. All public companies have to have audited financial statements, and maybe some private companies do too. So it's just going in and confirming the books and records and doing transactional analysis. And that kind of work I'd enjoy very much. I did a lot of taxation, which I did enjoy, tax planning for people. That was a fun part of accounting.
What were your jobs when you came back from serving in the Navy?
Well, I came back and got my CPA certificate. I worked for an accounting firm, Price Waterhouse, now known as Price Waterhouse Coopers. I was in the tax department there, and then left there, went to Marion Laboratories, Mary Merrill Dow. It was founded by Ewing Kaufman, who brought the Royals to Kansas City. Then went to work for a company called Rival Manufacturing as their CFO that makes the crock-pot slow cookers. So went from pharmaceuticals or a high margin, high cash flow to household appliances that were low margin and highly leveraged business. But again, with the accounting background, you can helps you understand business and the pluses and minuses of each of these different industries. And then I've gone to work on my own since 2000 after we sold Rival Manufacturing, helping people like Keith and about 5 other clients here in Kansas City.
Right. Of all the things that you learned from your parents, what do you feel was the most valuable?
Honesty, integrity, and treat people as you want to be treated. They were both my parents. Again, St. Joseph was a relatively small town, so you had to maintain a reputation of integrity and high standards. And my dad, being the business that he was, had to be viewed with integrity, or else he would not have had a business, a funeral business that would not have survived had he been something other than that.
What is the one thing you want most people to remember about you?
That's the old question, what goes on your tombstone? I think the only thing I want is that I'm a good person and I've made a difference in some people's lives here on a positive basis.
Did your family entertain others often?
Is there a segue into that question?
No, that is. It goes from one section.
Okay, no. My family entertained more when we moved from the smaller to the larger house from the smaller house I referenced earlier. Yeah, they entertained some, I would say, not every week, but they had guests in the house, and all the my brother and sister and I would have people in the house too, so we were a social outfit.
Any crazy stories from those parties or get-togethers?
No, the crazy stories you heard about were in other venues outside of our house that I referred to earlier. So no, they were pretty. They set a good example around us.
Okay. Do you remember any blizzards or tornadoes or floods or other natural disasters?
Well, there was a bad flood in St. Joseph in 1954 that, to this day, the actual St. Joseph Airport, the Missouri River, because of the flood, detoured, and now the St. Joseph Airport is now actually, it's called Missouri, but it's really in Kansas now.
Are you serious?
No, I'm serious. It's the channel was changed because of the high water during that flood. And of course, I remember the bad tornado or the plaza flood that hit here. Forget when that was. 51, and there was another, and the other flood too. That the plaza got. 51 was the stockyards. 77. So those are the three events that I remember.
What did you and your friends do when you got together?
Well, what stage of my life?
Growing up.
Growing up. Well, we when we started driving, we would tend to get in some trouble. We would
Naturally
use our cars to things that we shouldn't have been doing. And in high school, we had a good cadre of friends, a lot of good kids, and we would go out and party. I mean, a lot of the folks played high school sports. I changed high schools, so I couldn't play sports. I changed high schools in my junior year, so I was ineligible to play. I ran track and played basketball, so I was ineligible to play in my junior year. And senior year, it's just I didn't even think about sports. So no, we hung out and did a lot of cruise in our cars. We'd all, just like 20 cars. No one would ever pair up with anybody in a car. We all had to drive the other car, our own cars. So.
How did you get to school?
Well, in grade school I walked. In high school, my next door neighbor had a 1929 Model A Ford. And literally, there were four of us in the neighborhood, and there was only the bench seat in the front, so we would have to jump start that car every morning, run it down our street, push it, get us jump started. And that's how we got to school every morning in high school.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was.
How long was the walk when you were in elementary?
Well, in grade school, it was a good mile. But my brother and I, he was 4 years older than I. We would walk together. And back then, you could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't the danger that seems to be prevalent now.
When did your family acquire its first car? What make and how much did it cost?
I don't remember how much it cost. It was the first car I remember is a 1953 Chevrolet.
Yeah.
And it was automatic, and not automatic, it was a stick shift, black car, funeral car, but that was a family car we used. And first car I had was a 1966 Buick Skylark that was given to me by my parents after my senior year in college.
Do you know how much that cost?
I don't. It was a lot back then,
Yeah.
but it was below $10,000. I mean, maybe $6,000 or $7,000, but that was big money back then.
This one's about your adult life. Who influenced you the most and helped you develop your skills that you have now?
I would have to go back to my parents, both of them. I mean, they were very nurturing. They were complimentary. They were tough, but they really were very supportive in everything I tried to do. They were very, very open and very direct when I did something wrong. They told me about it, but no, they were examples that I hopefully will continue to follow the rest of my life.
All right. And this is the big one. Did you or your spouse go into military service?
Well, I went into military service. As I said, we were talking at dinner that in my sophomore year in college, I guess that would have been 19 68, 67 or 68, we had the lottery for the draft. There was a draft back then for people to go into the military during the Vietnam era war. My draft number was 75, so at that time I was pretty healthy, did not have any high school football injuries, could not get any deferments, so I decided to go into Navy ROTC at the University of Missouri and was a naval officer and served 13 months off the coast of Vietnam on a refrigeration ship. And I think there were three of those guys. This has been 40 years later that I still keep in contact with, and good guys, and we all were basically a band of brothers. As the movies say, that really happens. When you're in a conflict environment, people tend to close around each other and make sure that they're all protected and it's one for all and all for one. Survive and get back safely.
What was your main job on the ship that you served
Well,
on?
I was the weapons officer on the ship, and our weapons were not very sophisticated. We didn't have missiles. We had guns, small caliber guns at 3-inch 50s. That for aircraft we would shoot basically shells that would fragment explode like shrapnel and try to knock down a plane on that basis, which was not very good. So we would have to depend upon planes from the other carriers that were around us to help protect us as we gave them food and spare parts.
What was the scariest moment that you had when you were?
Well, the scariest moment was we were strafed a couple times by Vietnamese MiGs, and I don't know why they didn't shoot at us. They were probably 200 or 300 feet off the air, afterburners going and flying over and just scare the heck out of you. And you think they're going to turn around and come back, and they didn't. But I mean, we then call the aircraft carrier that was in our task group and say, hopefully they had these guys on their radar, but get a plane up here to help us out, even though it wasn't needed. But it was scary.
Yeah.
I didn't see any live combat. We had some people that would be brought out to our ship when we were in port to take out to the carriers. People that were hurt from the riverine. What John Kerry was in when he talked about. I mean, he was on these small riverine patrol fast boats that would go up and down the Mekong River, and so we had a couple of folks that came out to our ship pretty banged up. That's about the bloodiest I saw. We also, you make a good point. I learned how to give blood in the Navy because we were healthy. We weren't in combat. We weren't directly in combat. So every 30 days, we get a needle stuck in us to give a pint of blood for the guys that were on base land in Vietnam that need the blood from wounds and things like that.
Who was the first president you voted for, and why did you choose him?
Well, I voted for George McGovern, the senator from South Dakota, on two accounts. Number one, his original running mate was a guy named Senator Tom Eagleton from Missouri. I grew up in Missouri. And number two, he was our first anti-war candidate, and he ran against Richard Nixon. And I was in Vietnam then. I voted absentee, and I just wanted to get out of I just wanted the war to end. It wasn't a good war for me. I think for our country, as it proved out, as history has told us. So it was kind of my protest vote, even at that time, even though I was in the Navy.
Did you acquire any skills that helped you later on in life when you were serving?
Management skills. I went on board the ship, a 22-year-old ensign, and there's an old movie about a guy named Ensign Pulver. And really, you get on, and I was runny. I was just wet behind the ears and didn't know anything about management. I had 26 guys in my group, none of whom had a college education, and looking for leadership. And so in the Navy, there's a group called Chief Petty Officers that are they're not officers, but they're the highest enlisted people in the Navy, and they really run the Navy. They would say, Mr. Meierhoffer, you just stand back. We'll keep you appraised what's going on. We will administer discipline when it's necessary, but they run the Navy. It's you sit there and we do the paperwork and had leadership, but these guys were the old salts, as they talked about. Very competent, capable people, wonderful people.
All right. Well, I am out of questions. If there's anything else you'd like to throw in there and talk about, go for it. But other than that,
Well, Caleb, thank you for letting me do this.
Yeah,
I enjoyed
thank you
doing
for
this.
coming out.
This was fun. You were professional how you handled it.
I like it. All right.
Thank you.